All right, I'll close the door.
Hey, David.
Hey, hi, Bob.
How are you?
Pretty good. You at home?
I am. Oh, good. Okay.
I just arrived here myself.
Hi, Jane.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Barbara Poser, Jim Holland's also on from the Greater Boston District.
Oh, nice. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. I should get to a place where it's not too dark in my house
Yeah,
here. Hold on a
I
second.
hear you.
Looks like a few people stuck in traffic.
I think you might be right.
I just arrived home a few minutes myself. A few minutes ago myself.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, Diane, hello.
How are you?
Okay.
Is everybody on?
Not yet. We have three board members, including yourself.
Okay.
Me.
I see Lou, I see Izzy, and David.
Oh,
Oh, great. We've got a
oh,
forum.
there's Luke. So we have 4.
Hello, Lou. Hi, Izzy.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I trust everyone's well.
So far, so good.
Oh, so good.
Gallery view. That's a new one. Seen that before.
I'm getting up to 30.
Bob, who are we waiting on? Can't hear you, Bob.
You're on mute, Bob.
I know. Hi. I don't see Ray, and I was just checking on Commissioner Pierce.
I'm trying to get on. I'm having trouble.
Okay, and then Commissioner Johnson told me she'll be on in a few minutes.
Okay,
I can hear everybody. I guess I'm just not visible.
you aren't.
You
Can
are
you hear
not-
me?
Can hear
We can
you
hear
fine. Yes.
I don't know what I had, what's going on, but I was working fine last night. But anyway,
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ray.
All right.
Hi, Ray.
Madam Chair, I can hear everyone now. I was having problems with the audio.
Oh, that wouldn't have been good, Patty. So we can start, right, Bob?
Yes, we can, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So this meeting of the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections is now in order. It is Friday, October 2nd, 2020, and it is 4:34 p.m. Madam Secretary, please read the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Maderas,
Here.
Vice Chairman Pierce,
Here.
Member DeSimone,
Present.
Member Johnson, Member Ramos, Member Scholes,
Here,
Member West, we have a quorum, Madam Chair. Executive
Very good.
Director Robert Raposa,
Present.
Legal Counsel Ray Macaccio.
present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I know that Dr. Ramos is here. I don't think that we heard him say present, but I do see him. He's on mute, I think. And Mr. Pierce, we could see you, but now you're frozen.
Am I all right now? Can you hear
See
me?
you now, Izzy, yes. Thank you. Okay, so we will begin the agenda. Item number 1, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of Tuesday, September 8th, 2020.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Scholes,
Second.
second by Dr. Ramos. Any discussion? Vice Chairman Pierce? I think Dick is going to have to leave and come back because he's frozen. We still do have a quorum though, correct? Yes. Dr. Ramos, you voted aye.
Aye.
Mr. Scholes?
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone?
Hi.
I'm in favor as well. It's a unanimous vote of the board. Next item, item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 9, 2020, 11 a.m. meeting. Do we have a
So
motion
moved.
to approve? Moved by Mr. Scholes,
Second.
seconded by Mr. DeSimone. Any discussion? Voting for the motion, Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Scholes,
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. It's unanimous. I note that Mrs. Johnson has joined us. Hi, Jenny. Just in time for item number 3. The board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 9, 2020, the 2 o'clock meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by Dr. Ramos. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Dr. Ramos.
Aye.
Mr. Scholes.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. It's unanimous vote of the board. Item number 4. The board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of Monday, September 14, 2020. Do you have a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Scholes. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. DeSimone. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Scholes,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone?
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. It's unanimous. And the dog is in favor also, right? Never a dull moment.
Never.
We are, if with the board's permission, and if it's okay with all of you, I would like to move item number 8 up on the agenda because we do have some guests that we would like to hear from. And as a courtesy, I would like to do that. Do we have any objection by any board members speak now? Item number 8. The board may vote to suspend certain provisions of Rhode Island General Law 17-18-11 and 17-20-16 in order to certify and tabulate mail ballots that are postmarked on or before November 3rd, 2020, but are received by the board 1 or more days following Election Day. And I ask that this be moved up because we have with us this evening Jeanne Jackson, who is the postmaster. And we also have Bob Conroy, I believe his name is, also from the Providence Post Office, who I think we would like to hear from. So, with the board's permission, and we should probably start with an explanation. Bob, would you like to introduce the reason why we need to hear from the postmaster?
The postmarks on the ballots have been an issue for the presidential preference primary and also for the September primary, where the board has discussed those both times. It now also has become an executive order request of the governor that is being presented to you, in which Ray can give you some background on this. But I have asked that Jeanne Jackson, the postmaster of Providence, as chair has stated, to be present, along with 2 other staff members of the post office, James Holland and Bob Conroy, who is all all 3 of them are on the Zoom meeting this afternoon. Ray, would you like to?
Yes, let's hear from you, Ray.
Thank you, Bob. Madam Chair, members of the board. Before you is for your consideration, is whether or not you should suspend those statutory provisions that require that all mail ballots be received by the Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on Election Day. This question has come before the board several times now, and there is a continuing public concern with the current statutory deadline. And for your consideration, we have people from the local post office who we'd like to hear from. And I think, Madam Chair, whoever you hear from should be under oath, because what I would like to do is develop a record that would then support your decision, whatever you decide to do. In the event that there's any kind of a legal challenge, I think it's very important that we have something that a court could look at and understand what the basis for your decision is. Now, speaking of possible judicial actions, I would like to bring to the board's attention that there are several cases that are going on throughout the country that have raised very similar questions. I can think of offhand one case in Wisconsin, one case in Pennsylvania, one very recent case in Indiana, and I believe there are others. But let me just tell you a little bit about those. In those cases, the courts have considered whether or not they should extend the time period for the mail ballots that are received and into the equivalent of the Board of Elections for those respective states. In one case in Indiana, the court extended that time by 10 days following the election day, so long as the mail ballots have a postmark affixed to them of November 3 or earlier. In the case in Wisconsin, the court ruled that 6 days would be appropriate. And then in the case in Pennsylvania, which I'd like to just point or spend a few minutes talking about, that case is in the state court system. The two I just mentioned were in the federal court system. One was a district court decision. Both were district court decisions. One went up on appeal to the Seventh Circuit. My recollection is that the appeal was rejected by those who were challenging that amount of time, mostly on the grounds of standing. But in the Pennsylvania case, that's a state court case, and that is a Supreme Court of Pennsylvania decision. And in that case, the court allowed any mail ballot that is received up to and including 3 days after the election of November 3 to be counted and tabulated. And that would be for any envelope that is received, even if it has an illegible date on the postmark. So if it's postmarked, but the equivalent of the Board of Elections cannot determine whether it's November 3, November 2, November 1, if it's illegible. The court in that case said, so long as it's received within 3 days following the election day, it shall be presumed to be valid unless there is, by a preponderance of the evidence, an indication that it was not cast before or on election day. Now that case is noteworthy because there is an application to the United States Supreme Court that was filed just a few days ago. From our own experience recently, I expect that the United States Supreme Court will not sit on this appeal, on this application, and could very well rule on it in short order. I can't be sure of that, but I have at least some reason to believe, just from our own experience with our own case, that this may be a very rapid review by the Supreme Court that may or may not result in a decision that can give us some instruction and guidance. That could be as early as next week. So, Madam Chair, my proposal to the board is twofold. One, we do have people here. We can start to develop a record. I know that we have the postmaster for Providence here. I think it would be appropriate and to listen to her or her other colleague, because they've already set the time aside, and we certainly can develop the record from them at the very least. But my advice would be to wait on making your final ruling on this question until at the very least next week, just to see if this Pennsylvania case, or for that matter, one of these others, may get some attention and ruling by the United States Supreme Court. Now, even if it does, the US Supreme Court could rule on grounds that really will not give us any direction. But it is possible that they could say something in that ruling that would allow me to give you better advice on the merits of modifying this statute. This would be the first time that this board has ever, if it does rule in favor of extending, it would be the first time that it has ever done so. And we do have a statute directly on point saying clearly that every single mail ballot must be physically received by the board by 8 p.m. on November 3. We have modified that so that we now view any of these drop boxes throughout the entire state to be the equivalent of the Board of Elections. So we have accommodated people, given them an alternative way to make sure that they get their mail ballot submitted by election day by 8 p.m. Nonetheless, I think this is certainly a meritorious request by members of the public. it deserves certainly the board's attention. But I would benefit from at least seeing if the Supreme Court does rule on this. So with that in mind, Madam Chair, my recommendation would be to develop a record, at least begin to develop a record tonight. Hear from the postmaster, learn about how these mail ballot envelopes are being postmarked locally in our state, perhaps nationally, but just learn a bit more about the process to see how comfortable the board may be in making a determination that we should suspend that statute.
Very good, Ray. Does anyone have any questions of our attorney before we proceed? Okay. Ms. Jackson, welcome. And thank you so much for being here this evening, because we certainly look forward to hearing from you. As Ray suggested, we're developing a record, so I do need to swear you in, if you're amenable.
Right, but I've got to tell you that if this is an illegal issue, I have to defer it to our legal department in headquarters. I cannot speak on behalf of the Postal Service for the country.
Okay.
So I can't do that, so.
So does that mean that you're not agreeing to be sworn in here?
Well, what I'm saying is I can't, as in my position, I cannot speak, like I have to defer to legal, and my legal department's not on.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. DeSimone.
we could probably confine our inquiry to factual matters that reference and relate to postmarks and how they're affixed and things of that nature. And if it comes to a legal question, we could just defer that answer to her legal counsel at some point. But certainly we could get some testimony as to the process, and then at least we've got a factual basis on which to make a decision.
Ms. Jackson, does that sound appropriate?
I know Jim Holland, my counterpart's on, because Jim's at the district, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we can talk about, to be honest, you know, I appreciate the invitation to come here today, but I had no idea that we're going to be talking on the oath about postmarks, cancellations, or anything along those lines. So I would have to go back and talk to the legal folks at headquarters in terms of, you know, like I said, we don't want to misspeak on behalf of the Postal Service.
Madam Chair, I think that's perfectly appropriate, and I think if that allows the representatives of the Postal Service to speak to legal counsel, and then we could coordinate a hearing next week, hopefully with some guidance, maybe or maybe not, but hopefully with some guidance from the Supreme Court, then I think that would be fine as well.
So at this point, then, there's really nothing further to discuss, I would say.
Unless there are other people who were interested in providing testimony on this question. Otherwise, it could wait and be heard once
Right.
by the board at a later time.
Well, it makes more sense to hear all of the testimony at the same time on this matter. So I would suggest that we just defer action on this until next week, if the board would be amenable to that, if we could have a motion.
I'll move to continue it to our meeting next week. I'm not sure whether it's going to be Wednesday or Friday, but I'll certainly move to continue it 1 week.
Okay.
Second that.
We have a motion by Mr. DeSimone, seconded by Dr. Ramos. Any discussion of the board? Hearing none. Vice Chair Pierce,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Scholes,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. We do appreciate you coming, however, and understand what you're telling us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now. Have a good weekend.
Okay. Item number 5. The board may discuss and vote to allow the town of East Greenwich and the city of Central Falls to place a drop box next to the police station instead of at their respective city and town halls as set forth under the board's Dropbox regulation 410 RICR 20-00-24. Okay. Bob, would you introduce this, please?
This was a request from these two communities that had difficulty installing their Dropbox near their town hall. As you know, we do have the rule and reg on file about the Dropboxes should be located at the town hall, and that the last board meeting, the board took action to authorize that each of these Dropboxes also have security cameras installed that the cities and towns can monitor from their location. This is the first request we have received for a deviation in each of these towns. Ray, is there anything you would like to add as far as that rule and regulation?
I don't think so. I think you summed it up, Bob. I think it would just be whether or not the board finds there to be a need to allow these to be located other than at their city or town hall, which is what the regulation contemplated, that we would have a uniform location. Of course, there would be exceptions if it was physically incapable of being placed there or other reasons. The board would have the flexibility to allow other places to be used, but by and large, we anticipated these receptacles would be at the city and town halls.
Okay. Does the board have any comment or question at this point?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Pierce.
I am uncomfortable with the idea of having different places in different cities and towns where the Dropbox is located. I think there will be instructions given, and I think to the extent that they can be uniform throughout the state, that will facilitate the prospect of people using these Dropboxes and finding them where they expect to find them. So I have difficulty with approving the idea that they be located other than at the town or city hall in each city and town.
Okay, thank you for that. Other board members have any comment?
Madam Chair, is anyone from either of the towns here to discuss the matter before us?
I'm sure they are at this point. I just wanted to hear if anyone had any preliminary.
I guess my question would be, other than, is it something out of the way of convenience, or is there some physical reason why they can't be located there?
No, I think that they will certainly provide more information.
Okay.
Mrs. Johnson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Pierce and definitely appreciated the letter from the Voting Access Coalition. And I tend to agree with some of the reasons outlined for, in particular, the location of the police department in relocating these. So for me, I agree that we set something up and we should stick with it. And I do think that that is a relevant concern to moving those drop boxes to those particular locations. So I look forward to hearing more about the reasoning, but I'm tending to disagree with the request.
Okay. Any other board members have anything before we hear from the communities, if there are representatives here? Bob, do we know if there are representatives here from those communities?
Both communities are represented, Madam Chair. Alberto DeBurgo is on from Central Falls, and Lee Carney is on from East Greenwich.
Okay, so we probably would be best served hearing from them. You said Alberto
DeBurgo.
Okay, can we hear from that gentleman, please?
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Al DeBurgo from the City of Central Falls, Deputy City Clerk. The reason we're asking for the drop boxes to be placed at the police station, it is the site that we use currently for dropping the registration, so our voters are familiar with it. In addition to that, the drop box at the police station would have more security. It's 24-hour security from the police. And also, there's also cameras already in place outside of the police station, so we would not need to have any additional cameras added. As far as at City Hall, we already have some boxes out there, and it makes it difficult to find spacing for it, which makes it increasingly difficult for handicapped individuals to get to the sites.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Board, have any questions of Mr. DeBurgo?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Scholes?
Now, you indicated you had drop boxes for voter registration at the police station. How long has that box been in use?
Also, we have a drop box outside of City Hall, which was placed during the COVID crisis. That box is used for several other things, such as dropping off of recordings and mailings and so forth, taxes and whatnot.
But is there currently a drop box at in front of the police station?
No, sir. The police station is currently utilized as a station for when voter registrations, for the last day of registrations, where individuals can go in and actually drop off their registration. They'll go into the station and leave it with the dispatcher at the front desk.
But is there a way to move some of your boxes now to make room for the?
That is the issue that we're having, is that there isn't much room in that area.
But is there sufficient room to squeeze in this drop box?
No, that's why we're requesting to have it brought to the police station.
Is there a way to move one of the existing drop boxes to another location? So,
unfortunately, that I'm not sure that would be feasible, because that's where a lot of our tax drop-offs are happening. And also with the recordings, because of COVID, a lot of people aren't coming to the station, so they're just dropping it off in there. So it would create an issue for the tax department. And that drop box currently is already in place, and it's secured to the ground.
So how many drop boxes do you have existing?
We have one currently there. In the area that we're placing it, there's one, and it's the only area that's accessible for handicap.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Matt.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the board members.
Mr. DeSimone, did you have a question?
Well, the only question I would have is the distance between the police station and the town hall in Central Falls.
It's about a block, not far at all. Central Falls, as most of you may know, is only 1 square mile.
Mm-hmm.
The police station is less than a quarter mile from the city hall.
Right, but it's not a situation like, for example, in the town of Lincoln, they're all located on the same parcel. It's a separate parcel, separate driveway, things like that.
It is a separate parcel, yes. But as I stated earlier, the registered voters in Central Falls are familiar with the area because it's where they normally drop off, so their registration. So we would also send out mailings letting them know in both English and Spanish ahead of time, letting them know that is where the drop boxes are located. They're comfortable with it because it's an area that they've always gone to for dropping off registration. So it's nothing new that we're adding except for the drop box itself.
May I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
How many entrances are there to City Hall in Central Falls?
There is one main entrance and there's a backdoor entrance, but it's not, the back door, unfortunately, is not handicapped accessible.
Is it because there is planting there or some sort of landscaping that prevents the placement of a second box?
There's a bike rack there that's also kind of like an art piece, and it's cemented into the ground.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think at this point, I thank you so much, Mr. DeBurgo. I think we should hear from Lee Carney from the town of East Greenwich.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I would just like to note that I'm also here with Andrew Nada, the town manager. We did circulate a letter to you, Madam Chair, earlier today. I'm hoping that it made its way around. Thank you very much for that. We share some of the same concerns as our fellow communities. We would like the exception made here in East Greenwich based on really the ease of access. We're a little bit challenged here in East Greenwich, where Town Hall is nestled between Main Street, which is a busy commercial road with its own parking challenges. And the back entrance is Pierce Street, which is a one-way residential street that is used heavily for daily business within the community. The East Greenwich Police Station is such that it's on First Avenue, which is a very busy main artery in and out of town. The station is set up so that it would provide a really drive-through access. And the way that we have planned to install the ballot box is such that folks would not even have to get out of their vehicle. It would be very similar to kind of driving through the post office, many of the large postal offices that we have. So we found that to be a very easy for folks that maybe have some mobility issues to just kind of drive in one entrance, drop it in the box, and drive out. Also, our station, that particular spot, is under 24/7 surveillance already. We could forego the need for the cameras from the state. Additionally, we did note that we also use our police station for voter registrations to beat the deadline of Sunday, October 4th. So we do have residents that are familiar with that location as well, as far as having access to that service. Other than that, I would be happy to defer to the town manager if you wanted to add anything additional to support our request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Carney, Mr. Nada, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Ms. Carney's articulation of some of the needs that we have here in East Greenwich. And if I could just add a few points for the board to consider in its deliberation is a few of the things. We are very, very understanding of the position that the board finds itself in terms of the implementation and the breaking of new ground, in terms of the mail ballots in this particular very important election that's pending. The uniformity of a policy, I fully understand, is the path which I think most boards would take. But if I could add to that, that particular uniformity, as we all know as Rhode Islanders, is very difficult to apply to our 39 cities and towns that are all very, very different. So here in East Greenwich, we look at some of the challenges that our voters have, and we want to be able to embrace and stand with the board in its attempts to provide for a secure election, to be able to protect those ballots, build confidence amongst voters, and absolutely make it as easy as possible for our voters in East Greenwich to take advantage of this new system that we're trying out. So that being said, we are cognizant that change is difficult, and we fully understand that a different system in different places may be challenging for some to embrace. But what I would say in terms of some of the opposition that was provided in terms of providing consistency, in terms of the location and the potential hesitancy among some populations from being able to feel uncomfortable by approaching a facility, a public safety facility. You know, what I would say is that as unique as our 39 cities and towns are, our populations in this very small state are also very different. So our population here in East Greenwich feels very comfortable at our law enforcement facilities, and our facility, as Ms. Carney articulated, is extremely secure, has a perfect setup for a drive-through opportunity, is under surveillance, and we feel very strongly that by having the box, although it might be different from other communities, would actually meet some of the goals that you've set as a board, as I just noted, in terms of security and access and ease of voting. So we would, I'll stop there, and we're just really looking for your comments and input, and we would appreciate any consideration that you might be able to provide to this request.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Any of the board members have any questions of either of these persons?
A couple of questions.
Yes, Mr. Scholl.
The town hall in East Greenwich, that was the former State House, wasn't it?
Correct.
Right, and there are a lot of steps going up, so wouldn't it be a little difficult for people to climb up and down those stairs to deposit a mail ballot outside the front door of the town hall?
It still takes my breath away every time I take those stairs. With the, we're also in a historic district. This is a historic building. The best place that I could see for that box to go would be down at the foot of those stairs on the public sidewalk, right up against Main Street. We're an active community here at night. I don't know if that would be the best place to put it. Be a lot of foot traffic going by, makes me a little bit nervous. The backside, like I said, there's again a sidewalk. It's constantly crowded with, it's parallel parking in and out. It would be very difficult for, folks would have to probably, if they got lucky, to get a spot or pull up alongside of another parked car and physically get out of the car. So a little challenging.
Little traffic issue there. As far as the police department, you're indicating put the drop box there. Is it going to be in the parking lot away from the building, or you plan to envision it putting it against the building?
It would be away from the building. I would say maybe 30 to 40 feet. So you have First Avenue, and then there's like a small buffer of some vegetation and a memorial rock, and the driveway kind of goes in on a curve, and the station is set back. So the distance from the building is minimal.
And you indicated that they'll be placed in such a way that a voter can just open the box from the window of his car and deposit the ballot?
Yes, sir. It would be set back from the curb also, so there would be less likely for somebody to, come in and hit it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? Yes, Mrs. Johnson.
Madam Chair, just a comment. Just want to point out, I think with the two communities that are asking for this request are indeed very different in their demographic makeup. And so I appreciate Mr. Nada pointing out, that the residents of East Greenwich do not have, share potentially the same fears and anxiety. And that is very much because their privilege in being predominantly white does not necessitate that they, have had the same dealings with law enforcement. And so I feel the need to make that comment to point out that that is, relevant as we move forward to make this decision, that the community of Central Falls and the residents, when we talk about disenfranchising voters, might feel differently about approaching it that way.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else on the board wish to speak?
Yes, I have an issue here. If the people at Central Falls cannot place the drop box in front of the city hall, we're basically depriving the voters of the opportunity to deposit the mail ballot. And the same with East Greenwich. If the drop box is placed at the top of the stairs, those with mobility issues cannot climb the stairs, and they'll be deprived of the opportunity to drop off the mail ballot. So in these cases, I think we have to make an adjustment based upon the reality of the situation and provide an alternate location for these drop boxes that would be convenient for the voters in that area.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Pierce.
I'm familiar with the East Greenwich situation, and I can understand that fully. And the police station situation there is very convenient in terms of traffic, whereas the town hall is not. Barring some protest or information concerning Central Falls, which I am not familiar with, about people going to the police station, I would be willing to allow the exception, provided that in each case, that notice be given to all voters in those cities and towns as to the location of the drop box.
Any other comments from the board members? We did receive correspondence from some 20 organizations regarding this matter. And I don't know if someone would like to speak for those organizations. Of course, I don't think we want to hear from all 20 this evening, but we'd be willing to hear from someone if they would like to speak.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, who is this, please?
This is Kristen Langworthy. I'm with the Coalition for the Homeless, one of the signatories for the Voter Access Coalition's letter.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to speak briefly to a part of our letter that has been slightly mentioned, but not necessarily really embraced, which is the concern for certain populations. It's not just intimidation, but having had negative interactions with the police, or maybe having some experiences that make them completely unwilling to go anywhere where police may be present. For example, I can speak authoritatively that I have experience registering voters who are homeless and housing insecure, and they are vehement that if they have to go anywhere where they would be required to be interacting with the police or under observation, they would not go. It would chill entirely their willingness to participate as voters. In fact, they shut down entirely, particularly since there are many of our fellow Rhode Islanders experiencing homelessness who have been previously incarcerated and have been traumatized by that experience. It is a significant factor in a population who is already overburdened by accessing their voting rights. So I wanted to raise that point on behalf of the Coalition for the Homeless, but also to speak more broadly that we have many populations in our state who would feel so uncomfortable with the idea that they would not even be willing to entertain the notion of participation. And my suggestion, at the very least, acknowledging the other concerns and counterpoints raised today, would be that if another location besides the police station were possible to consider, I understand there are practical limitations and we don't want to inconvenience other voters in order to accommodate some, but this concern is significant enough that I would suggest another alternative location besides the police stations be considered for these two towns. And I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions if I can.
Anyone have any questions of Ms. Langworthy?
I have one question.
Yes, Mr.
Would there
Sherwood.
be concerns that the drop box was at a fire station?
Thank you, Commissioner Scholes. I do not believe that a fire station would present the same kind of intimidating or chilling effect as a police station.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Any questions? Does the board wish to take an action on this matter?
Madam Chair, I move that we allow the town of East Greenwich to locate its drop box at the police station under the conditions enumerated by the the clerk, that it will be in the parking lot away from the police station, so that people can drive through and drop it off without having any interaction with the police department.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion?
Matt, I'm sorry.
Mr. DeSimone?
Well, I think Mr. Macasio has something, so that may answer.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
question.
Okay, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Just that, I just wanted to point out that earlier, board member, Vice Chair Pierce said that he wanted any motion to include notice to the residents, but the motion that we just made did not. I just wanted to point that out to the board members.
Mr. Scholes, did you wish to add that to your motion?
Well, I amend the motion that that to be a notice to the voters in their town, and also some sort of sign at town hall indicating that the drop box is at the police station.
I'll second that amendment.
And that's in both instances?
In both. We're talking about.
We're talking about East Greenwich.
Just
Yeah,
East Greenwich.
So my question is the motion confined to East Greenwich?
This one, because I'll have a second motion dealing with Central Falls.
Okay.
Because I think it's a different issue.
Right.
Okay, so you've amended the motion then to approve this request with the condition that it's placed in the parking lot, which is away from the police station, and that notice be given to voters and a sign placed at the town hall telling them where the box is.
Yes.
Correct. And that was seconded by Mr. Pierce.
Right.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. We will vote. Vice Chair Pierce,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Scholes,
Hi.
Mrs. Johnson,
Nay.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. The motion carries. 5-1. Okay, do you wish to make a second motion, Mr. Scholes, or does someone else like to do that?
Well, on the second motion, I think perhaps we should find out if from the town clerk, if we could use, if the drop box could be placed in front of one of their fire stations. I think that would solve some of the concerns and also provide some security.
So you'd be asking that of Mr. DeBurgo.
Yes.
Mr. DeBurgo, are you hearing this?
I am, Madam Chairman. The unfortunate part about it is that the fire station and the police department are in one building. They're kind of side by side.
Oh.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Johnson.
I just, a question for Mr. DeBurgo. I did, and Mr. Scholes picked up on this a bit, but is it, I heard that it's going to be difficult. Is it, you know, in terms of labor, time? I hear that there's other boxes out there and the handicap accessibility is of course extremely important, but
It's a matter of space, ma'am.
I'm sorry?
There just isn't a space to put it there. The only other option would be putting it on the sidewalk, which would hinder the spacing for people to pass by, especially if they're wheelchair accessible. So it's, the issue is that there just isn't enough space in the area where we're thinking of putting it, where it's accessible by the handicap individuals, to actually allow for it to be there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. DeBurgo?
One more question.
Yes,
Is
Mr.
there
Scholes.
another location in the town that's under surveillance, camera surveillance, that you could suggest as a location for the Dropbox?
We did not explore another location, unfortunately. We were thinking the police station would be most ideal simply because of its accessibility for the public. It's centrally located. It's next to the fire station. There's handicapped accessibility there. There's also a camera already in place. So that's why we kind of just leaned towards it. We just felt that it made more sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we prepared to take an action on this matter?
Madam Chair, I see this as an issue. It's a balancing issue, but providing a service to the voters and providing people who have mobility issues dropping off their mail ballots versus a concern that the location may not be conducive to some people dropping off the boxes, dropping off the ballots. But I say with respect to the people who may have a concern about dropping off the mail ballot at a box located near the police station, they can wear a mask like everyone else does and somehow mask their identity so they won't be under observation and they can drop off the mail ballot. I mean, we have to look at the realities of the situation. It's important that we have a drop box that can be used by the general public, the voting public. Yet we want to make sure that the drop box is under surveillance so it won't be vandalized. So it's a balancing issue as to which way we're going to go.
And I, if I may, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'm sympathetic with the problem. But any voter that feels that way, of course, is free to vote at the regular polling place. So it's not as if we are denying that person the right to vote. So I think the concerns of access to the handicapped, the disabled is an important issue. And if in fact the town cannot find a place at the town hall, and I'm not familiar with that location, so I take their word for it, that we're not really completely depriving a person of the right to vote, but we're perhaps making it a little less comfortable for them, and they have to weigh their discomforts, one against going to the polling place against one going to the police station or near
Thank you,
them.
Mr. Pierce. Bob, I have a question. Are we going to be providing drop boxes at each of the polling locations as well?
Yes, we are, Madam Chair.
So on election day, someone could come in and drop their mail ballot at a polling location?
That is correct.
Okay. Mrs. Johnson, you had a question?
Yeah, no, just another comment. Well, I'm really uncomfortable with moving forward this. I will vote to reject the request, but like when we think about accessibility, and the options that we have provided as a board around that, accessibility should extend to all voters. And so I just wonder if there's a way, if there's any place else that could be researched, could be looked at, that was, another option. I fully understand the physical constraints with the town hall, but I think, the intimidation factor is very real. And even with a mask, there are people who, because of the color of their skin, will feel intimidated because of past dealings. And so I'm struggling with moving forward with this, but.
Understood. Thank you. Any other comment?
Diane,
Yes, Dr. Ramos.
Madam Chair, I'm
Yeah.
having the same problem with this one, and I have to agree with Jen because some people have had different experiences with police, and especially people of color, and there is definite not fear, but of an emotional tie with the police, especially at this time, what they've seen on. And so there's going to be people who won't go to by the police station and do that. One other thing, what I'm hearing, and I think I don't know who brought it up, but they did say that there's other options of them to drop off their mail.
Mhm.
They can early ballot, they can do it at the polling place,
Mhm.
and they have to go. So they do have two other options.
Correct.
Yeah, so I feel a little more comfortable now. Yeah. Okay.
Are we prepared to take an action on this matter at this point?
I'll move to approve the exception for the city of Central Falls.
Second.
Give a second. Seconded by Mr. Scholes. Any discussion?
With the same requirements of notice.
Yes.
Correct. Treating them notification wise and exception wise the same way we treated East Greenwich.
Very good. Any other question, discussion? Hearing none, we will vote. Vice Chair Pierce,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Scholes,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Nay.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. Motion carries 5-1. Next item. Item number 6. The board may discuss and vote to allow 2 or more voting districts to be located in one building or location pursuant to requests received from local boards of canvassers as set forth on the attached list A for the following cities and towns: Central Falls, Coventry, Cumberland, East Providence, Foster, Jamestown, Johnston, Middletown, North Providence, North Smithfield, Pawtucket, Portsmouth, Providence, Richmond, South Kingstown, Tiverton, Warwick, West Greenwich, Woonsocket. And as I understand it, we would have to discuss each of these separately. I think to introduce this, I would like to hear from the Deputy Director, Miguel Nunez. He's been intricately involved in these requests. Miguel?
Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow board members. I want to go through what each request entails and overall the impact it would have on November 3rd. So we received 21 requests from the 39 local board of canvassers requesting to consolidate one or more of their precincts into a single location. North Kingstown has since withdrawn their requests and will open all 9 of their polling places on November 3rd, so that drops down to 20. There are 421 voting precincts in the state, and the local board of canvassers have made requests to operate these precincts out of 335 physical locations on November 3rd. On election day, there will also exist 39 locations for voters to register to vote and vote for president and vice president in the city or town hall. So that gives us a total of 374 voting locations in operation in the state of Rhode Island on November 3rd. In 2012, 392 locations were used and to house 413 precincts. And in 2016, 395 locations were used for 421 precincts. Those are the last 2 presidential elections. Of the 335 locations on November 3rd, 270 of them would house 1 precinct, and 65 locations would house more than 1 precinct. So that breakdown is accordingly, 49 locations would house 2 precincts, 13 would house 3, and 2 locations would house 4 precincts, and 1 location in the state would house 6 precincts, for a total of 151 affected precincts out of the 421. It's also worth noting that 31 of the precincts of these 151 were housed in multiple polling place locations in previous elections. So that means you could have had a side A, side B, or side A, B, C, depending on how many precincts were assigned to that particular location in past elections. To break down each of the requests, Central Falls, City of Central Falls, has 8 precincts and they're requesting to open 6 locations in the city. The reason they're given is because the sites will better allow them to follow COVID-19 guidelines. The 2 locations that they're seeking to consolidate are small and they have some concerns about social distancing guidelines. Coventry who has 18 precincts and they're requesting to open 12 locations to house those 18 precincts. Locations are unavailable due to COVID-19, according to their request. Town of Cumberland has 13 precincts. They are requesting to open 8 locations to house those 13 precincts, again, because of difficulty finding locations due to COVID-19. The city of East Providence has 18 precincts in the city, and they're requesting to open 16 physical locations for those 18 precincts. The reason they gave is because of a difficulty obtaining locations due to COVID-19, as well as a shortage of poll workers. The town of Forster has 2 precincts, and they are requesting to open 1 location to house both of those precincts. The sites are better able to follow COVID-19 guidelines according to their request. The town of Jamestown is requesting to open has 2 precincts and they're requesting to open 1. They did not cite a specific reason in their request. The town of Johnston has 13 precincts and they are requesting to go down to 10 locations to house those 13 precincts. And again, they have a shortage of locations and a shortage of workers. The town of Middletown has 5 precincts and they're requesting to open 3 locations due to a shortage of workers as well as difficulty getting locations to agree to open. The city of Newport, they have 9 precincts and they are requesting to open 7 locations to house those 9 precincts. And again, they have difficulty finding locations due to COVID-19. The town of North Providence, 16 precincts, 7 locations are being requested to be allowed to open. They did not cite a specific reason in their request, but given our discussions with them, we are aware that they have some unavailability of some locations. Town of North Smithfield, they have 5 precincts They're requesting to open 3 locations. And the reason is because locations are unavailable due to COVID-19 is what they cited. The city of Pawtucket, they have 31 precincts and they're requesting to open 14 locations. Again, locations are unavailable due to COVID-19, they cite, and the shortage of poll workers in some of those precincts. The town of Portsmouth, they have 8 precincts and they're requesting to open 5 locations. They have concerns about a shortage of poll workers. The city of Providence has 80 precincts and they're requesting to open 47 locations. No specific reason was cited in the request, but we are aware in our discussions with them of unavailability of locations. The town of Richmond has 2 precincts. They are requesting to open 1, and they cite locations unavailable due to COVID. The town of South Kingstown has 10 precincts. They're requesting to open 6 locations due to unavailability of locations according to their request. Tiverton is requesting to open 3 locations for their 7 precincts. They are citing locations unavailable due to COVID-19 as well as a shortage of workers. The city of Warwick has 33 precincts and they're requesting to open 29 locations. To house those locations are unavailable due to COVID or too small for social distancing is what they mentioned in their request. The town of West Greenwich didn't cite a specific reason in their request, but they're requesting to go down to 2 locations to house their 4 precincts. And then finally, the city of Woonsocket, they have 12 precincts in the city and they are requesting to open 11 locations due to location unavailability due to COVID and the shortage of poll workers. Now, in these consolidated locations that they've made the request to open, the assigned precincts would actually share the same poll workers, the same electronic poll books, the same voting booths, the same auto marks, and the same DS200. So they're going to utilize and share the same resources. Voters from all of these precincts would approach the same check-in station at that location, and upon checking in on the electronic poll book, the poll workers would be trained to identify the voter's assigned precinct. A designated ballot supervisor would then retrieve the correct precinct ballot from the appropriate ballot package. They will verify with both the bipartisan pair of supervisors that is checking that voter in, as well as the voter themselves, that their precinct is correct, and they issue the correct ballot to the voter. Now, the voter would then proceed to any voting booth in that location. Upon marking their ballot, they would insert it into any of the multiple DS200s, which would be assigned to that location. All of those DS200s would be programmed to accept all of the assigned precincts for that location. Now, this consolidation was planned when the general election was expected to be a predominantly mail ballot election, with the local boards facing a shortage of poll workers and locations due to COVID-19. Now, as of a few moments ago, from what I just recently checked in the Central Voter Registration System, only 131,226 voters have requested mail ballots for the November 3rd general election, with the deadline being October 13th. At this point, we do not expect the number of applications to surpass 200,000 applications. This is substantially less than the approximately 450,000 voters who were expected to apply to vote by mail. Therefore, we do expect significantly more voters than anticipated to vote in person, either at the city or town hall during the emergency period or at the polls on November 3rd. We now expect around 96,000 voters to vote at the emergency period between October 14th and November 2nd in person at the city or town halls. And we expect around 289,000 voters to vote in person at the polls on November 3rd. Now, based on this higher projection in-person turnout at the polls, the largest turnout at any of these locations would be 2,424 voters at one location, which is the Charahoe Middle School in Richmond. With the average overall turnout at all the precincts expected to be around 700 voters per location on average. 4 of these locations that I just went over with you, town by town, would see over 2,000 voters using, would see over 2,000 voters go through that polling place that day. And those locations would have at least 3 DS200s. For some perspective, in 2012, there were 2 precincts that handled more than 2,000 voters, using a single eagle at each of those locations. And the eagles were the previous equipment that we used. In 2016, 27 precincts processed more than 2,000 voters with only 1 DS200 at each location. As you know, in 2018 and in 2020, we have used more than 1 DS200 at each of our locations, with some seeing up to 3 to 4 DS200s per location. We expect about 3,300 poll workers to be needed to staff these consolidated locations based on the anticipated voter turnout. Now, we have made some good efforts to assist the local boards with their poll worker recruitment, including creating a centralized sign-up tool on our website and social media posts, and we are currently running advertisements on Facebook and Instagram. As of today, we've sent about 1,800 potential recruits to the local boards over the last 2 weeks. And we are currently receiving about 100 new applications per day from prospective poll workers, which we regularly send out to the local boards. Now, finally, today, we received some preliminary data on potential wait times from our team over at the URI Sustainable Innovations Lab. As you know, starting in 2017, we started partnering with them to analyze the potential voter turnout and potential wait times at these locations. But unfortunately, we have not had enough time to completely analyze that data to determine how the increase in in-person voting is going to affect wait times at these consolidated locations on November 3rd. Now, URIs, they generally do a great job conducting these simulations for us as quickly as possible, but it's always been difficult for the staff here to provide them with all the necessary data on the polls because of the short turnaround time between the primary and the general election. And this is especially true this year due to so many shifting locations due to COVID-19. At this point, however, we are at a critical junction. We must make a decision on these polling places in order to have adequate time to configure the DS200s being used for this emergency voting period, which starts soon. These are scheduled to be delivered to the local city or town halls starting next Wednesday. And due to the way that the election is securely configured in our election management system, the precinct DS200s and the emergency voting DS200s must be set at the same time in order for that to occur. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Madam Chair.
Very comprehensive report, Miguel. Thank you so much. Mr. DeSimone, you had a question.
Yeah, I have actually a question. You said that there were 335 polling places of the 421 that would be open under this plan?
Correct.
And I think you mentioned 35 would be presidential ballot places at the various town halls, correct?
39, 1 per each city
39.
town hall.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the board members. I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the numbers and reducing the polling places by this many. There's some significant drop-offs on polling places in some of the cities and towns. I mean, my initial thought would be to require all the precincts and open up all the polling places if this is going to be that busy an election, especially if the mail ballots aren't to the number where we thought they were. So, I mean, I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, but.
Thank you, Mr. DeSimone. I'm thinking that I'm having the same difficulty when you think about the fact that we're inviting people to be standing and waiting in line if there is a surge at the polling places on the day of election, which would not be a good situation either.
And
do any of the other board members have any questions or?
Madam Chair.
I do.
Mr. Pierce?
Well, I share the same concern as Mr. DeSimone. The idea of people waiting in line to be processed before they go to their separate polling locations within the one location will be a time, could be a long wait. And I am in favor of opening as many polling places that we're entitled to have so that people can vote as easily as possible.
Dr. Ramos, I think, was next. Mr.
Okay.
Dr. Ramos?
Diane, one of the things the problems in East Providence is that there's like one of the housing developments don't want you there because of the virus. So they don't have a place there any longer, so they had to move it. And what they did is they moved it to the high school. My only concern at the high school is I think it's a great spot, but they have to have signs because there's so much construction going on there in the back there with the new school. So people coming from Rumford Towers, say, coming to the high school for the first time, it has to be designed so that they can get to the parking lot and to wherever they have to go to vote. And other than that, I don't see in our community, East Providence, there's not too many places you can go when they don't want you there because of the virus. So that's a problem also.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Mr. Scholes, you had something you wanted to ask or
I was
say?
going to say that it's not going to basically a predominantly male ballot election based upon these figures. The bulk of the voters will be voting in person, and having long lines is going to frustrate, discourage people that just walk away. So my feeling is that we should have as many polling stations as we could possibly have to accommodate the bulk of the voters.
Yes, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, and thank you, Miguel, for that report. Do you have a sense from what was done and what was analyzed by the group that you have? Do you have what they looked at? Was it population size to determine wait times and volume at specific? How deep does that go? How much would that more information could that give us to make a determination of moving to open more?
So they use a variety of factors. It's actually quite detailed. They factor in the amount of equipment available to place at each location. They also factor in many occasions, the actual dimensions of the actual facility. And also for COVID, they've actually introduced a factor with the cleaning time. How long is it going to take a worker to clean that particular booth before someone else can use it? Because that's part of our guidelines. And they estimate about 20 to 25 seconds, roughly on average, for each booth to be cleaned between each voter. So there are a number of factors that go into that. And they also actually stagger the peak times. So for example, they might say that the average wait time would be 30 to 45 minutes, for example, but that could actually increase to more than an hour in some instances. Just as an example, during peak times, because of they use the turnout times based on the 2018 election when voters showed up at the polls, whether it was at 7 a.m. in the morning all the way till 8 p.m. So they roughly mirror that same pattern. So they can say, well, this is the most voters that will actually show up during peak times, and this is how long the lines will be at peak times, and then how long the lines would typically be during the rest of the day. So unfortunately, we have not had the time the ability just today to analyze that data, but I would imagine that adding additional locations would reduce the times overall, because as one of the commissioners said, if you have individuals going to different precincts, then that's less time that they would have to stay in the line rather than having multiple precincts going to the same location.
Thank you, Miguel.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Dees.
So, I mean, again, I can't say strongly enough that if we're going to be in a situation where someone who's trying to vote before work, for example, has to go into a line and there's a 30-minute or a 40-minute wait in that line, they are not going to vote. They're going to leave. They may come back at the end of the day. Their schedule may not permit it. I just think we're treading on very difficult ground, especially given the fact that in a great number of these requests almost appear to have been made out of convenience. It's not a situation where, as we did in the primary, just before the primary election, we had some polling places that were physically could not be opened after all options were exhausted. This doesn't appear to be that situation. In fact, Some of the communities didn't even designate a reason why. And the COVID is sort of a two-edged sword, because we don't want people waiting in line for 30 minutes either. So.
Any other comments by board members? Any questions?
And I would say that if we're gonna look at it that way, we would have to look and almost look at each individual city or town here and vote on it that way. Because, you know, I don't have a problem with the city of East Providence, because I do know that they've had places where schools where they had 2 or 3 different areas that they would have in one spot, voting places that they would have in one school. So I really, especially East Providence, I don't see a problem. But if we're going to vote all at once, now, you know, to me, it's a problem. If we're saying that, and I have a tendency to agree with Lou, that each one of these places, they don't all have the same reason. And so if we vote, we would have to vote on each individual city or town. That's the way I look at it. I'm not sure if that's the way it's going to go, but because if you're going to group everybody into one pond and say, oh, okay, we're not going to go along with you, that means there's some people in here that don't have a choice. I know the city of East Providence don't have a choice because there isn't anything available for them to put up the polling places.
Right, understood. Mr. Mercatio, is it necessary if we take this up to vote individually on each of these separate requests?
Yes, Madam Chair, each one has a different basis, and you'd have to make your motion based upon the request being made by each community.
There you go.
Ray, if we were inclined to open all the required polling stations, would we still have to vote individually?
No, that would just be one broad determination that all polling remain, and that will be the basis of the vote. You would not have to break it down.
I mean, that would be my motion, that we require all the polling places to be open. And then, as we've done in the past, our department, the board can work individually with the cities and towns, exhausting all the options first, and then bring those back before us on an individual basis, if need be.
That makes sense.
I would share in that motion.
Yeah, that's
a workable solution.
Seconded by Mr. Pierce. Before we do have any action on the motion, I note that Renee, is it Osimor, would like to, she's been raising her hand and she's been very patient, so I think we should allow her to speak. Would you state your name and your community, please? You're muted, dear.
You're muted. You're muted, Renee.
You have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
I did. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
Please
Renee
continue.
Omasori from the Providence Board of Canvassers, and I respectfully just want to share a few comments. We in the city of Providence, we're in a very unique situation where we have at least 30 locations that we don't have the opportunity to use as polling locations due to COVID. And so ordinarily we would have a lot of facilities such as senior centers, recreation centers, houses of worship that at this time don't want us in their facilities.
Yes.
So that is our concern. I mean, we don't have the luxury of finding other locations. Okay, I mean, ordinarily we would have no issue with, you know, consolidating or not consolidating as many, but we're down to schools, recreation centers, and a few community centers. So, I mean, when churches are giving us the nod to say no in some cases, we know there's an issue. Okay, the Providence Housing Authorities, they've all told us no. Okay, plus we don't know day to day which other facility is going to tell us no. You know, we're very comfortable in working with the Board of Elections to get the right numbers down. So we hope to not have any facility where we've got maybe 6,000 or more registered voters in one particular locations. But I respectfully, I'm asking you on bended knee that we do reconsider some of these local BOCs to be very unique in their request. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I know that also Susan Flynn from South Kingstown wanted to speak. Susan? Susan's muted as well. Bob, are we muting these people
No,
or?
excuse me, Madam Chair. Susan Flynn is no longer muted. She should be able to hear us. Maybe
Okay.
she's having trouble with her
Sorry,
microphone.
Susan, you have to start over. I think she might be muted herself.
No.
You can't hear you, I'm afraid. We'll come back to you. I know also Kathy Placentia. Kathy? Not
Hi,
Kathy.
yes, hi, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Kathy, sorry.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. So I will just piggyback on what Renee said. These are not situations where this is out of convenience. The PHAs have kicked us out. We do use a lot of high rises, and obviously they're very high risk communities. Some of these locations are already A and B locations that were merged together to create that one center. So that's where it might have been a place of if we're having a hard time getting polling officials, why don't we merge these locations together? They're already in A and B. But in most cases, we utilize 67 buildings and we've been kicked out of 16. And that changes day to day. I'm still waiting for responses from other locations, so I don't even know if we have the amount of buildings that we will, that are listed.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Susan, are you able to talk to us?
I think so. Can you hear
There you
me?
go. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. In South Kingstown, we have a polling place located at the university. Back in the spring when it was time to get ready for the presidential preference primary before we knew COVID was going to kill us, the university declined to provide us with a polling location of any sort on campus this year due to COVID. So we have lost that polling place. That is not a possibility to go back to. We also have a polling place in a very small conference room at the police station, which does not lend itself to allowing for poll workers, voters, and voting equipment for an election, and no room whatsoever to have voters waiting in line other than in the hallway at the police station, which they are not comfortable with. The school superintendent expressed great concern with our use of 2 elementary schools during the primary. So we attempted to find other locations for districts that were located in the elementary schools. We have taken the very small district that was at the police station and added it to a gymnasium at a nearby school. That district was out of district to begin with. It is actually closer being in with the Broad Rock Middle School than it was at the police station. We have taken 3 elementary schools and combined them into a vote center at the Community Recreation Center, which has been used as a polling place for the presidential preference primary, our town budget referendum, and the primary election in September. It makes for the best space in town that we have to use. It provides distance, it provides lots of space. We can space people out. We have room for them to wait. These were not changes that were made lightly. They were changes that are requested out of necessity. And I ask that you approve these changes for us, because to have to go back to square one at this point is going to be extremely difficult.
Thank you for your comment, Susan. We also have Erin Lease who wishes to speak. I see your hand is raised as well. Erin?
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, what city or town are you from?
So I'm the town clerk from Jamestown, and I'd ask that the board consider each of the locations separately. Jamestown is very unique. We are a small island with great advertising campaign, and we're looking at it from a different perspective. Ours is more of a fiscal responsibility perspective. With the one polling location, we had 26% today at this point take advantage of mail ballots. We still have 12 more days of that period, as well as the 20-day early emergency voting period. That is, we're answering the phones nonstop all day long asking about that. The Board of Canvassers is going to be kicking off a large voting campaign on the ways Jamestowners can vote, and we feel that we can take all of our voters on election day who do want to come out on election day at Town Hall with enough safe PPE equipment. We won't have to purchase separate sets of plexiglass for an additional location because we've already set that up for the primary. So we're looking at that as more of a fiscal conservative side at saving some money in requiring the additional polling location site. I did run some numbers because Jamestown does have a large voter turnout. If we have 80% of our voters today that came out, and I subtract the mail ballots we've already received, where if we had our election tomorrow, 2,700 voters would be voting on election day. We still have 12 days of mail ballots, and we still have the 20-day early voting period. So we feel that we're very comfortable with opening the one polling location, and I just ask that you take each instance on its own because we're all unique in our own right.
Thank you for that. I think we also have Tracy Nelson who wishes to be heard.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairwoman Medeiros. I just want to say, I want to mimic some of the other comments, but specifically, I'm from the city of Newport. I'm the elections administrator. And we're in a situation here where we've been told we cannot use a couple of our polling locations, specifically one by the Housing Authority. It's a high-rise facility with a large population of elderly and disabled. And they've been told by the CDC that they should not use the location. They've been told by the Department of Health that they should not allow this. So my board has voted not to have voting at that location. We've already had an inspection with Steve to find an alternate location. I do have another location that's a church that we've been told that we're not allowed to use. So I mirror Erin's comment that I think they really need to be considered on their own merits individually. The other thing is, you know, we want to notify people as soon as possible of what their locations are going to be. And many of us have ordinances as far as purchasing requirements. We need to get quotes or bids for those notifications. So I really think, you know, time is of the essence. We need to get moving on this. We need to get decisions made. I don't think Steve Taylor has time to go out and do inspections of, you know, 100 more alternate locations. So I would ask that you know, take our guidance and, you know, I don't think anyone's doing this out of convenience. I think we're all doing it for valid reasons, particularly ones that we're simply told that we cannot use them. And I don't know how, if you make the motion to open all the polling locations, I don't know how we force ourselves upon some of these locations that have told us no. I mean, that's just not realistic. So I just ask the board to consider that fact when they contemplate ruling on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have Sandra Giovanelli.
Good evening, Sandra Cumlin. I just want to agree with what a lot of the other clerks have already stated. For Cumberland, it is out of necessity. We also have not been allowed to use the facilities where there are high rises with elderly. The CDC and the health department are not allowing them to do so. So again, it's not out of convenience. It is out of necessity. We have explored other locations and have had no success. So we don't know where we would go if our request wasn't approved.
Thank you for your comments. I note that Sarah, is it Repose, wishes to speak? Sarah?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to echo what Erin Lee said. Richmond is very similar in situation. We have 2 polling locations, both at schools. Unfortunately, one of the schools that we use right now, Richmond Elementary, is being used as a classroom and storage. So it's not available. So I had proposed, well, my board had proposed switching to just the Charahoe Middle School, which is a very large facility, and really increasing the amount of poll workers that work there, have one real super voting center. Also the fiscal aspect of it as well. I mean, having to find the protective equipment for 2 polling locations obviously is cumbersome to a smaller community, as well as, you know, trying to keep everyone safe. So that was the concerns of my board, and hence why they asked for the combination.
Thank you for your comments. Board have any questions of anyone they would like to ask before we move forward with the
I have
vote?
a question of Miguel.
Yes, go ahead.
What's the drop dead deadline to come up with a list of all these voting stations?
I would say right now, because we're planning on working over the weekend to get these configured for delivery to the emergency. The issue is that although it doesn't appear that the emergency ballots has anything to do with this, the emergency voting machines has anything to do with this question and this issue, but it does because the way the equipment is configured, everything has to be configured all at the same time, including the emergency DS200s and the precinct DS200. So we are really at a juncture right now where we need to work all this weekend to get this ready, to program these machines so that they can be, the emergency machines can be ready to be delivered to the city and town halls for the start of the emergency period.
Thank you, Miguel. Bob, you've been quiet. I'd like to hear from you if you don't mind.
Well, as you know, the concept of merging the polling places was very popular for the primary and for the November election. It has become so by the local boards, again, to request this information. I understand from hearing the board that there seems to be some concerns about allowing these combinations to occur. What I would like to share with the board is that if you decided that you did not wish to allow these merging of polling places to occur, the staff can work with the local boards in the same manner in which we did for all previous elections prior to 2018. It is not uncommon to have more than one polling place under one roof. But again, the 2020, the combinations of the polls had a benefit, but they also, we did not have the number of interest in, well, the lack of interest for the mail ballots that we are seeing right now from the voters for the November 3rd election, which means that the voters, which we anticipate could be over 400,000 in total, are either going to vote at the 20 days emergency period at the boards of canvassers, or on November 3rd, they are going to go to a polling place in the same manner as they have for previous elections.
So Bob, are you saying that the board may be able to assist the local boards then in coming up with solutions to the difficulties they're facing? Because it's a really tough balance between worrying about public safety and health and also worrying about the local boards coming up with the locations they need for this election.
I agree with you. It is difficult for these local boards, and as you are well aware, as is the rest of the board, I have a staff that is committed 1,000% and to work with these boards of canvassers, and that whichever way you decide you would like to proceed is how we will proceed as well.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Mr. DeSimone, I believe, and seconded by Vice Chair Pierce to deny the requests that are before us for a consolidation. Do you have any discussion of the board before we vote?
Madam Chair, may I add to that, if I may?
Sure.
That I feel perhaps the most important issue here at the moment is the one of making sure the equipment is ready for election day and also for the emergency voting periods. I'm understanding from Mr. Reposer and Miguel as well, that there's a chance to do some adjustments going forward if that's necessary. And polling places absolutely cannot be located. I think the critical thing here, in my mind at least, is to be sure that our equipment is ready for these events, and the emergency voting period is not that far away. So that becomes very important in my mind anyway.
Well stated.
Diane?
Yes,
Diane?
Dr. Ramos.
I'm listening to everyone in their argument in regards to why they would like to do this. And because I know East Providence so well, I know that, just like some of the other people said, that they just don't want you there because of the coronavirus. And so you have to come up with a plan. So if we keep saying to the local boards and we keep saying, well, no, you better do better than that, unless you're there and know what the situation is. I mean, we can sit over here and make all kind of decisions for them, but we got to listen too. And if we don't listen to them, and then we're going to send it back, and then we're going to have them come back again and make another presentation. They're going to come up with the same problem. Either you're going to say no, and by that time, election is going to be here. So I just think that we don't listen to the local boards enough. I think if they're telling us this is their problem, and we're saying, and it's not for convenience sake either. And it seems that they're looking for it because it's a necessity, because people just won't allow you to use their buildings anymore because of this virus. So I think somewhere along the line, we have to listen to the local board. So we can't, keep telling them, keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing until you can't squeeze anymore. And that's what that we're doing. And so I'm going to vote against that.
Well, I understand that position, but then again, we can't have a bunch of angry voters upset that they have long lines and people being frustrated voting on election day if there are insufficient voting stations.
Well,
it's a difficult situation. I know in other states where they have voting stations at voting stations are at firehouses. They open them up. They have the equipment, bring it outside and set it up for 2 or 3 days. Maybe that's a way to look at it. But I think we should let the staff have an opportunity to confer with these board of candidates and come up with a list of alternate voting stations. I think we have to look at what is in the best interest of the voting public.
I agree with you, and I agree with you. I don't have a problem with that. That's what we're all looking for. But I mean, if we can accommodate based on the fact that the owners of these buildings or school apartments or wherever that, no, we don't want you to use the facility because of coronavirus, and you have to shrink. And this is not the first time, like in the city of East Providence, we had 2 or 3 areas under one roof. I mean, we've done this before. So that's why I say that, I don't have a problem with it shown before me, and I don't have a problem with you saying, because I wouldn't want long lines either. But the fact of the matter is, this is a different times. And I'm just as, I'm looking for people's right to vote as anybody. And I certainly want to cause them to stand in line, but it's not the first time they stand in line. And if it's a legitimate reason why they have to stand in line, because there's no other place they can go, well, then that's what they have to do, stand in line. If they really believe in their vote, that's what they will do. Wait in line until they can vote.
Well, I believe that we should give the staff, the Board of Elections, the opportunity to work with the local boards of canvassers finding alternate locations. And now, for instance, in East Providence, the Metacopa Country Club might be available as a location. Agawam Hunt Club might be a location. There are other locations to consider.
Well, and more to the point from what Bob said, it's more about placing more than one polling place in a location. Bob, isn't that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an ability that we have.
So that's definitely something that we could be considered here. Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chair?
Simone, yes.
Also, with regard to the schools, and maybe this is a better question posed to Ray. With regard to the schools, the reason they closed on election day is to give the cities and towns use of the schools during the election. Am I correct, Ray, or is that not the case?
Yeah.
Historically, the reason why I can't say, but that is the practical consequence of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was definitely the thinking.
Yes, I can answer that. To embellish on that, yes, the legislators saw the wisdom years ago to assist with the voting, required that all public schools in the state of Rhode Island be closed for general elections to be used for just that purpose, to be used for elections.
Right.
And then they went back a few years later and amended the law to also require them to be closed for any statewide primary.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Pierce.
I've heard the numbers of possible voters in one location. And I've heard the number 6,000. I think I've heard the number 5,000. And I wonder if there is an acceptable number of potential voters at any one location, which would give us some guidance in making a determination like this.
Miguel, do you have anything you'd like to share? I know you had difficulty looking at the data because you didn't have enough time, but.
I can just add that we as a staff, our line was the 6,000 mark, just for our comfort level, because of and that was when we were planning on this being a predominantly mail ballot election. Given the fact that it has shifted to be apparently more of an in-person at the polls, that has given us some concern with that number to some extent. In some locations, again, every location is different. However, that is the number that the 6,000 is the number that we use as the as a maximum that we were comfortable with, based on most locations seeing under 2,000 voters at that location, well under 2,000, and then, as I said, some of them actually surpassing the 2,000. And in Richmond at the Chatelle Middle School, they're actually surpassed 3,000 under some of these new projections. So yes, there is a number that we have kept in that we've used as the baseline.
Any other questions? Are we prepared to vote? Okay, Vice Chairman Pierce.
Because of the need to have the equipment ready, I vote aye.
Dr. Ramos?
Nay.
Mr. Scholes?
You repeat the motion, please?
The motion was to deny the request to allow the voting districts to be consolidated as requested by each of the communities.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Nay.
Mr. DeSimone?
Aye.
I am voting in favor. It's very difficult for me to do this, but I am concerned about the safety of the voters. So I find myself voting in favor of the motion. So the motion carries 4-2. Next item, number 7. The board may discuss and vote to approve the location for each of the polling places for November 3rd general election. Mr. Reposa, would you explain this, please?
This item was to discuss with you which locations are going to be approved for the November 3rd elections. Based on your motion to item number 6, my suggestion would be that we will be having a board meeting next Wednesday or Thursday. I would suggest if the board allow the staff to be able to prepare that list based on your last motion. And it would be presented at the next meeting on either Wednesday or Thursday afternoon.
So this item then, along with the previous item, would be continued to the next board meeting?
That would be the approval of the locations and also of the postmark would be included, or would be moved to next week.
Is there a motion to move this to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by Mr. DeSimone. Any discussion? Vice Chair Pierce.
Aye.
Dr. Ramos.
Aye.
Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. It's unanimous. Item number 9. The board may vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246(5), subsection A, subsection 2, concerning potential litigation that involves handicapped access at its leased premises located at its main offices at 2000 Plainfield Pike, Cranston, Rhode Island. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to go into executive session at 6:17. Vice Chair Pierce.
Aye.
Dr. Ramos.
Aye.
Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. DeSimone.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. Miguel, can you get us into closed session, please?
Jacob will do that for us.
Very good.
I'm in the process now.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
It was a pleasure.
God, that was awesome.